You're listening to the Voice of Your Brand podcast, episode number 11. In today's episode, we are taking a closer look at why your last launch failed. That's coming up next.
Ready to go behind the scenes and learn what it really takes to stand out as the voice of your brand? I'm Katherine Beck, voice actor and voice coach. And after 20 years of being the voice of other brands, I'm here to show you how your voice is your most powerful tool to creating the impact, influence, and income you desire. The world is your global stage, so get ready to up-level your voice and your personal brand. This is the Voice of Your Brand podcast.
We will get started with today's episode in just a moment, but first I want to give a big shout out to Mindy, who says, I have learned a ton from Katherine around how to improve my voice as an entrepreneur. I have pages of notes from Katherine based on takeaways and lessons I've learned along the way from her teaching, podcast, and presentations. She's a superstar when it comes to all things voice. Wow, thank you so much, Mindy. And it's been such a joy to expand my reach and work with entrepreneurs just like you. And it's amazing when you can start to learn how powerful your voice is and can be as an entrepreneur. You truly have the ability to create so much impact with your audience and influence and inspire them to take action. And so thank you so much, Mindy, for this 5-star review. And hey, if you are out there and you are loving these first handful of episodes from the launch and today, go ahead, do me a favor. Make sure you hit that follow button if you have not yet done so. Click those 5 stars and leave us a review and let me know what you think of this podcast. And if you do, you will also be featured right here on the podcast. So if you are loving this podcast, go ahead and leave us a review. We're going to get into today's subject, which is launches, in just a moment. But first, I want to let you know that I have a free voice masterclass coming up at the end of September, and you are invited. I'm so excited to share this with you. We're going to be talking all about how to speak with influence so you can get more sales. How good does that sound? All you have to do is head over to katherinebeck.com/masterclass, and I will see you there. All right, let us get into today's subject matter, which is launches. And speaking of launches, I just had a launch for the podcast, and I am so excited to give you an update on the podcast launch. Now, at the time of this recording, we launched 2 days ago. So on day 1, so 24 hours in, I like to think of the launch period as about a 48-hour period. For me, I think it's a 72-hour period, but we will see. I will update you on the next episode, or perhaps on Instagram or TikTok if you follow me there. But that first 24 hours, you get a good sense of what's going on in the charts. And I had very little expectations going into this launch. Why? Because it's my second podcast. So I already have another podcast. I've already done the podcast launch, and that was a really big launch. I spent a lot of time in the lead up to launching that podcast. A lot of time. This time, I did not. I did spend a lot of time in the recording and getting the episodes ready, but I did not spend as much time, in fact, only 2 days' time, letting my audience know about the new podcast. So there was, as we say in the online entrepreneurial world, the launch runway was only 2 days. That's it. That was it. So it was very exciting. I had literally little to no expectations. And I think that was the key, because when we are emotional, we often are seeking a certain outcome and the emotions get in the way and sometimes can orchestrate what happens from that point forward. So I had no expectations. I was thinking when I launched and I was going to look at the charts the next day, wake up in the morning and have a look at the charts, I was thinking, I don't know. I mean, I've got a decent size audience, but this podcast is a slightly different direction to my other podcasts. So maybe maybe I'll be hopefully like top 50 in the charts, something like that. Also because I was changing categories. I launched into marketing, which is in the business category, which is a very tough category to get down in the numbers, get one of those top spots. And so I didn't have very strong expectations because I'm not really known in the marketing world just yet. But that first morning I woke up and I looked at the charts and I stopped breathing for a second because lo and behold, I was number 3 on Apple Podcasts and I couldn't believe it. Number 3? How did I do that? So here's how the charts work. You chart in different countries. So it's not like a global, just one chart for the entire world. You chart in different countries. So I ranked number 3 in Australia for marketing. And then I ranked as well, I think, number 57. I'll have to go back and check. I think I ranked number 57 in the US, which was way better than I thought. Way better. And then today I just looked again and I have ranked in the Netherlands and Canada. So I'm starting to rank in other countries as well, which is super, super exciting. Here's the kicker. I woke up this morning, so this is day 2, 48 hours in. I get an email from Podcharts, which is like a place where you can get the charts, for your podcast and other podcasts. I'm number 2 in marketing. I went up a spot. I couldn't believe it. I mean, number 3 was amazing, but number 2, get out of town. So here's the cool part about this is that if you are big into online marketing and that sort of thing, the top 2 names ahead of me were Jenna Kutcher and Amy Porterfield. I bumped Amy Porterfield. Oh my goodness. Like, she's a marketing queen, an online marketing queen. I will tell you, I've been in the online space for about 4 years now. And while I've learned a thing or two about online marketing, that definitely was my weakness. So the whole thing about me launching in marketing and getting to number 2 and surpassing Amy Porterfield is kind of funny. Like, it makes me chuckle because I was like the little engine that didn't want to give up, on my lack of marketing skills. I just keep going and going until I figure it out. And so clearly something's resonating. People are listening. People are loving it. Thank you so much for the people who have listened, left reviews, sent me messages and said how much they're enjoying the podcast. I'm so thrilled. And I'm so, so excited to keep sending out even more episodes coming your way. So I wanted to share that with you because we're talking about launches. So I might as well share what this launch was all about. But in terms of launches, raise your hand with me if you've ever had a failed launch. I think it kind of is one of those rites of passage as an entrepreneur, as an online entrepreneur, as a personal brand. At some stage, you're going to have a launch which you consider a failed launch. So for those of you that are listening and are going, well, hang on, what's a launch? If you're not so sure of the term launch, let me break it down for you. So a launch basically is, I like to think of it as any sort of promotion or presentation. For us, I'm going to put it into the online space because I'm an online entrepreneur. So I'm going to equate that to that in the online space, a promotion or presentation of an idea. A launch often occurs when we open the doors to like a product or a program or service of some sort. Okay, so that's what we're equating a launch to be. So the launch becomes a pretty big deal in the online world because it's like our sales mechanism. It's how we start to create sales for our service or a product or a program. And I can't tell you how many times I've launched at this point. It's been quite a few, but I will say this, it does get easier over time, but I definitely had a bump in the road. January of this year, I had my first real failed launch where I got 0 sales. I have never in the past gotten 0 sales. I've always at least gotten a few. So to get none and to have put so much work into that launch, I was so sad. And it really affected me to where after that launch, I was afraid to make a move. I was really sort of traumatized by the zero sign, that there were no dollar signs. It was a zero, big fat zero. So I wanted to create this episode because I wanted to talk about the idea of a failed launch and what that is and maybe some strategies so to not to have a failed launch. Now, if you are anything like me, you may have noticed this post-lockdown era that we're in. I've noticed that it's not as easy or profitable as it was during that 2020, 2021 period where we were in lockdown. It was like a boom for the online space, right? So much easier to make sales, so much easier to get people into your program. But now I have noticed that it's a little bit more of a challenge, and that's okay. It's a different time. That just means we need to pivot. We need to evolve. We need to shift our messaging. We need to shift things. What was working then is not necessarily working now. If that is you, you are going to get so much value as we deep dive into that on why your launches may not be converting as well as you would like to. So let's break that down. Let's get into it. All right, here's what I think is going on. I see a lot of online entrepreneurs spending a lot of time on their messaging leading up to the launch, setting up your emails, creating your Facebook ads, building your list. What I do not see a lot of, and this is one of the biggest mistakes I see, is you're spending no time or very little time on the actual delivery of your launch, meaning preparing and rehearsing to speak, to present information, messaging, content in front of your live audience, whether they are in person or on the virtual stage, the online stage. It doesn't matter. In fact, it's probably easier in person because you can see their faces, the faces of your audience members. It's a little bit easier to interact and connect with them. But when you're in the online space, gets a little bit more of a challenge because you can't see their faces. So what happens is you lose that connection with your audience because you can't see them. And then you put your focus on the messaging and getting that out, that you lose the connection. It also might feel kind of awkward speaking to a computer screen or a camera and nobody talking back. And I get why you would spend so much time on your messaging because it's one of the most important things in your launch, that and the offer that you are presenting. But there's one other area that greatly impacts your conversions, your sales, and that is the delivery. The delivery of the messaging. And how do we deliver the messaging? Through our voice. So I also get why you're spending so much time on all the steps to get everything ready leading up for the launch. But the reality is, once you've launched one time, you have most of the work done, which leaves extra time to focus on other aspects of the launch that maybe you didn't focus on before you were trying to get everything done the first time. Is that making sense? Now you've got more time because a lot of the work has already been done. So now becomes the tweaking, the finessing, the enhancing, which is the good stuff. But now that you have a little extra time, the one thing that people still forget to focus on is the delivery of the messaging. And here's what truly separates the high 6 and 7 and 8-figure entrepreneurs from the rest. And if you've been hitting a wall or your launches are going down and you really want to bust through that wall, get to that next monetary goal, then listen up to what I'm about to share. Because if you do this one thing I'm going to share with you in this next launch of yours, you're already separating yourself from your competitors. You're standing out in your niche, you are attracting the attention of your audience, and you will be well on your way to becoming that 7-figure entrepreneur that you've been dreaming about for the longest time. So here's what you should be focusing on your next launch, your launch delivery. As I've been saying all along, the launch delivery. Because you can have the most perfect messaging, but if you don't know how to convey that messaging in a way that evokes and this is what you got to listen for, evokes a thought, a feeling, and a connection with your audience, they will lose that reason to want to work with you, specifically want to work with you. You have to remember that people are buying from you, from a person, from a personal brand. Think about that word for a minute, personal. When someone buys from you, they want to feel like they know you and that they can trust you and that they are excited to learn from you. If you're holding any sort of invisible barrier between you and the audience, or you're focusing so much on the words on the page, whether it's bullet points or a script or slides, you've lost that connection with your audience. That invisible barrier has been put up, and you're holding yourself back from more sales. Because here's the thing, your audience isn't stupid. They can sense and they can feel when you are being genuine or when you are being inauthentic, or even worse, when you're stuck in your head. Even worse, when you're stuck in your own limiting beliefs. So if you start the launch and you're like, I don't have what it takes. I'm so nervous. What if they think this of me? What if they don't buy from me? What do you think's going to come out of your mouth? What do you think that they're going to hear? They're going to hear all of those limiting beliefs travel through the sound waves straight to them. When you're making the launch all about you, thinking about everything that needs to get done in the launch, you're losing that connection with them. Instead, you need to make it all about them. It's not about you in the launch. It becomes about serving them. Because here's the thing, you got to remember that when someone signs up for your webinar or live launch or challenge or whatever, they have signed up to an event, an experience. And you need to treat it like an experience. Treat it like a Broadway show that you spent hundreds of dollars. Treat it like your favorite rock concert. Treat it like the most incredible experience ever. Every time you launch, you have a choice to make it a crappy experience, a boring experience, an annoying experience, or an inspiring experience, an exciting experience, an informative experience. So that choice is always yours. You are in command of that experience. And that's the one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs aren't thinking about, is that experience. But when you look at the 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs, when you register for their live launches, their webinars, their presentations, it is an experience. That's what ignites you and excites you to want to work with them. That's what makes them the top in their industry. That's what attracts you to them. They know that they need to create an experience for you, and they do it. And they do it pretty well, right? So the choice obviously is yours. You can keep doing what you're doing, but you're likely going to get the same results. And I guarantee your audience would prefer inspiring and fun over boring and annoying any day. And hey, if you're already launching and doing all the things, why would you not want to layer in an experience to your launch? If that's the one thing you haven't tried, and the one thing that could make that big impact on your dollars and cents, I say go for it. But hey, that's just me. All right, that is it for today's episode. And remember, if you'd like to learn more about my process and how to enhance your next launch experience, then join me for my free masterclass. You can register at katherinebeck.com/masterclass, and I will see you there at the free training. And remember, if you loved this episode, go ahead, let me know. Take a screenshot of the show and share it with me on your Instagram story at Katherine_Beck_. Tag me in it. Let me know if you have any questions or topics you'd like to hear on the podcast. Send me a DM. And coming up next week on the show, we are talking about if your audience believes you have authenticity, credibility, and authority. Now, make sure to share the show with all your friends. Let them know what's coming up next time and invite them to tune in with you to learn how to speak up and stand out as the voice of your brand. Until then, go on, get out there and share that powerful voice of yours with the world. And I'll see you back here next time.